Namaste.
Namaste.
This is Trauma is Karma Beyond PTSD. Since my recent 6 weeks with COVID, existence has forced me to have a meditation retreat that I wouldn't give myself. And I've expanded, dove, I don't know what poetry to use, but I've had quantumly more consciousness than ever before. Things that I've been puzzling about for years have become a lot clearer to me, or at least I have new explanations for them, and they seem clearer. The essence is the mind has 4 states. The karma mudra, when you do everything. The Gyan Mudra, where you're able to watch what you do, which includes what you think, because thinking is doing. People take drugs, psychedelics especially, go on trips, fast, all kinds of basic meditation, and the karma mudra, we remote the thinking and you're doing, to the Gyan Mudra, where you're aware of your thinking and you're doing, but you're not that. Now, the next step is called the Swami Mudra, which means time, where all of a sudden you drop in to that place where there is timelessness, where you know that you are eternal, that life goes. This is in the Swami Mudra, where authentic intention lives, and where if an experience is strong enough, karma is etched. Because karma is not just ordinary memory, which the mind can let go of and solve. It's a deeper thing that needs a different kind of resolution. But there still are traces of things that must be done. Authentic intentions, your authentic being. Deeper than that is what's called Mahamudra, where the mind no longer exists, and where you, as the self, don't exist, but you are in tune with existence. And so you're both everything and nothing. If you're on the path of meditation, you can say, there's nothing, there's nobody, there never was, there never will be. Everything's emptiness. Or if you're on the path of love, you can say, God and I are one, it's all the same. Consciousness is in and is made of everything, and we're all one. But also there's nobody home on the path of love either. So what's happened to me is I've somehow dropped from being mostly in the karma mudra and occasionally in the Gyan and Swami mudra to almost all the time being in the Swami mudra. And with this, my sensitivity to energy and to reading minds and to people's intentions has gotten a lot clearer. And with this has come clarity about some basic questions about trauma, karma, and PTSD that I would like to share with you. Authentic intention comes from the Swami Mudra. And that's how I tell who's ready for ketamine therapy. It's like I can feel it. If the intention's authentic, I feel a wave coming up from the heart. I saw these guys today, one of whom had been an addict, on and off, since over 20 years. He's in his 40s. He'd been to a dozen rehabs. But something in him felt it's time to heal, to move on. And he's a very sensitive guy. And he helped solve some problems for me. His mother had been addicted to opiates when he was in her uterus. But then he was born prematurely and he was in the neonatal I see you. You know, in a bassinet basically for over 3 months with no internal contact. So he helped me solve the deep problem of how much of addiction is from lack of love and how much of it is a biological, difference in the nervous system. It was clear to me that his was from lack of love. That the 3 months without his mother, on top of the birth trauma, made him feel, I'm not lovable. This is in the Samadhi Mudra, before words, before ordinary mind. And it knows I have to adapt myself to not allow too much love, to not need too much. It's an active block of both flow of love within yourself and the flow of love from contact with others. And this is why my friend Varesh, one of the founders of Phoenix House and of the University, the greatest addiction therapist I've ever met, said, love is the healing force. And the other thing he said was, unless the intention of the act is correct, unless the person with trauma has the intention to transcend it, no therapy is good. But if the intention is correct, it will find a way. And different methods work different amounts for different people, but the intention is the real purity there. So these are the things that got really clear to me today. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it, and if you ask me any questions on it, I can expand on it.
The first thing that came to my mind was maybe 20 years ago, I read about a report from Russia where there was, they had done studies on children that were, abandoned at birth, and they were in, like you said, the neonatal care from, being born, and there wasn't enough staff or anybody to take care of them or hold them or spend any time with them. And then they later did MRIs on their brains, and they found holes in their brains. There was just, and I saw the images, there was large vacancies of, brain matter there. So it had, an acute effect on their development. And they all had, developmental disabilities from this, just from the lack of, attention. So that definitely has a huge impact. Not just emotionally, but physically as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's expand on intent and what that means. So say I decide, and this is an actual experience Samantha and I both had in this life, we're going to quit eating sugar. And Samantha says, okay, but we're going to finish it. We're going to finish what we have, or we're going to give it away. And I said, no, I threw everything in the trash. We quit eating sugar. That was the intent. And we were able to quit eating sugar because we not only had the intent, but we made the action on the intent. Now, that's how people quit smoking. That's how people, it's the same basic structure or the same basic behavior pattern or program, whatever you want to call it, that says, I'm going to get out of my body tonight. I'm going to do this. You set the intent and you have the action. You cannot have it happen in your mind. You say, okay, I'm going to have it happen and it's all up here. It doesn't work that way. You have to set the intent. You have to bring the heart center in, which is the most powerful thing that I think this human body has. And it's the energy of the heart intention that manifests the mind's desire to have an out-of-body experience, or quit eating sugar, or quit smoking. And then the action takes place with the whole consciousness in play. So it's an experience, right? So that's the experience of quitting sugar or having an OB or whatever. That's the experience. I think that's what I got from what you were saying, and I think that's part of how any meditator or any seeker or anyone trying to change their world, I think that's the same structural pattern. I don't know if that makes sense.
How did you find the intent to get over your PTSD? That's what I'm more deeply interested in. Anything you could say about that?
Okay. On the PTSD, I can talk to you about that at length. So
Yeah.
what I found, and remember I told you I have adult asthma?
Yeah.
Okay. I just discovered this not more than a week ago. And I'm laying in bed and I'm going, Samantha, my adult asthma is I have it because of the lines of defense that I have to put around myself. And the lines of defense were it's held on my vagus nerves, right? At least that one of the 12 cranial nerves that runs the length of the body, but there's others associated with it because that's where we hold memories of trauma. So you sit like this. And then one night I'm laying in bed and I say, it just released. And I've not been able to breathe for a week. And all of a sudden it was gone. No medications. I didn't have to take any of my herbal supplements or any of my AMA medications. It just stopped. So the intent was to transcend this trauma that I was holding on to, which are my lines of self-defense for protection in this life. And in my case, and in everyone's case, you protect yourselves from family, from society, from all these things that keep invading and attacking, right? And that's the perception. From my perception was I was being attacked constantly. The asthma's gone. Wow. So you just described what happened to me, and I did not laugh when you were describing it, but I'm saying, my God, there's Bodhicitta right on top of my game, right again. And, you know.
We're right the same way of done it. That's
Yeah.
why this amazing thing happened, these synchronies happen between us.
Yeah, I know. It's funny, isn't it?
I have no idea where the wave comes from, but, you know, I'm on my board and I look over and there you are right next to me.
So, but the beautiful part is what you can do, and I do this to a degree when I help someone that's afraid of dying or want to understand what it is. But what you can do is you can heal your patients from post-traumatic stress disorder by having this understanding. It is bodhicitta. It is always the intent. But how do you manifest the intent? I know there's... Go.
This is one of the things that got clear to me.
Good.
The intent is in the Swami Mudra. It's not a doing. You can't have a thought which leads to a behavior, a doing of some kind that's going to change the intent. You can't make it. So the intent is what you have to do karmically, and your attunement to every other energy in the cosmos at the moment. Now, what Osho says, and what's been my experience, is that if you can witness your intent, which means witnessing that which you call yourself, watching your own feelings rather than doing anything about them, it transforms it. You just described that you watch the memories of your traumas, and with it came the understanding that, my God, my asthma is because of my traumas, and with that understanding, the intent to heal manifested.
I get that, and I totally agree with that, and that is what happened. I put it a different way. I look at it like this. It's...
The more we can give people, the more people will understand this.
Well, my intent, when I tried to do it with my head, it didn't work. It didn't work. But when I did it from the energy from here, which is really the powerhouse of all of us, I had to have some intervention to help me understand that this is the powerhouse, and I had intervention, and which was really cool. And then,
but that's experience, right?
Actually, more recently, a divine feminine entered me here. And so when I understood that, it's like I was this ember, just like with a little glow, and all of a sudden it burst into flames and it became alive. And then at that point, the mind became second fiddle. And this became the prime orchestra right here, right? And then through that, when the mind got out of the business of running my life, which was, the mind did some good things for me. Samantha and I've had a pretty good experiential life, and we did a lot of cool stuff. But we didn't pay attention to the dis-ease in our body, which my asthma is a product of dis-ease. And when that relieved, I mean, I was laying in bed with Samantha, and I go, Sam, I can breathe. And I told her exactly what happened, exactly what you described, exactly what you just described. We, of course, use different words because you're a medical professional and I'm a business professional. So we use different experiences. So, but you said, I think we said the same things, but with different words. Yeah, good job. I like it when you come in here and tell me what I've done. Yeah.
I feel there's a wave of energy in the world now that is pushing people to experience their unexperienced either inner female or inner male. That the women are allowing their inner male energy to express, the men are allowing their inner female. I see this in the ongoing conflict between the Indian sannyasins and the OIF, with the Indian sannyasins who will always allow more of their inner female but repress their inner male. Osho says this about Indian culture for thousands of years. Their authority is starting to come out and they're confronting OIF, which is full of Anglo-Saxon males who are stuck with their repressed female and pretending that they're deputized by God to be the priests to say how Osho should be to everybody and everybody else get out of the way. So the other side of where I see this, there's a big hoo-ha going on amongst the Rajneeshpuram residents, where all the women who were sexually abused as children are coming forth.
Yeah, I saw that. I read that one.
Accusers.
Yeah, yeah.
They have somehow the intention to heal themselves as manifesting. Each one in a somewhat different way. You can read the personalities from the comments, but that's ignoring the commonality, which is the urge to heal manifested by the blooming of the suppressed male energy in each one of them. And I see this, I've seen thousands of PTSD patients with all my work in the VA hospitals and the rural hospitals and stuff like that. And you can't just heal it by blaming somebody or blaming yourself or catharting it or making stories about it. The only real healing is witnessing your identification with the trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Well done.
It moves back to the rest of the conversation.
Yeah.
That until you realize I've identified with my trauma, I think I still am a victim, or I think I still am a perpetrator, or a helper, or a blamer of the perpetrators. These are the four main jobs that people pick up as personality. And those are all deep identifications. And unless you witness your own mind doing those dances and let it go and understand it, you're doomed to continue and repeat the dance.
Bodhicitta, this is absolutely one of the best conversations we've had. And let me just say one thing, and I know you're gonna agree with this, but I want to make sure your listeners understand this. Is the mind is, yes, it is here, but it's also part of the 12 cranial nerves, so it extends through the whole body. And the trauma, I discovered the trauma on my vagus nerves. And, we each have, how it is, your doctor. The vagus nerves run down to the abdomen.
Say whatever you know. Don't assume
Yeah.
I know anything or anybody takes it for granted. You are an authentic witness. Say your piece, please.
Okay, so I found the trauma on my vagus nerves, and once the mind stopped, because I stopped. Well, the mind didn't stop. It's still there. It keeps going, but it's like over there. Okay, so I just let it go. I don't fight it. I'm not going to win that fight. I've lost that fight 1,000 times. And so once I just let the mind go, and then I just feel the vagus nerve, the trauma resurfaces. But when it resurfaces, it's from a perspective of the witness, but not the witness in the head or in this nerve, the witness in this energy center. And this energy center then connects to this energy center, and I'm pointing to my belly button, the hara. And when those two connect, it is a circuit that by society's norms and by society activity and the control of society, parents, is severed. Once that's reconnected, then I was able to release all the trauma. And I didn't even release the trauma. It wasn't even my intent. It just released.
So to someone that isn't as familiar with this language, say somebody that wants to quit smoking, what would you advise how would they connect their heart center to the energy center near the belly button? And can you put that in like layman's terms? Somebody that's not even a meditator?
Unless you're incredibly lucky, you have to be a meditator.
Well, then they could become a meditator.
The two basic practices that will keep anybody in meditation for the whole journey, how many years of lives it takes, is to be aware of your breath going down into the pelvis of all kinds, and to remember that everything you think, everything you feel, taste, smell, touch, conceptualize is a movie in your mind called me. That all we know is our own individual movie. If you can remember to watch this movie like you're the audience, to watch this movie like it's a dream you're watching rather than your real life, that's the essence of the teacher's Book of Wisdom. That's the essence of all paths in Tibetan Buddhism and most of the wisdom traditions, that you are the witness and not that which you can watch. You'll forget hundreds of thousands of times, but those two basic practices keep you in meditation all the time. That will allow you, as it deepens, to start watching your own thoughts and feelings from the right distance. You can't decide, I'm only going to watch my thoughts and feelings about this, but not everything else. It doesn't work that way. It's a modification of your being, not a doing.
So I'll give you some incentive to not hold on to stress. Eventually you'll have a heart attack. So it was probably a good idea to shake that as soon as possible.
There's a positive end to it also, that the deeper you go, the more peaceful, relaxed, conscious, and loving your life is.
That is absolutely playing out here. It's been playing out, but there has been a quantum leap since this COVID isolation. And we basically have become isolated. I go out and do a little bit of work for a friend, but there's no one there when I do it. I go to an empty place. And it's like that isolation has kept us away from everyone else's trauma. And I think this is why a lot of Tibetan monks do that isolation in a cave, is so that they can really identify with what's happening and it becomes more clear. But the main thing is, a meditative state is something when you're working, you have to put the time aside to do this state. But when you're in isolation, a meditative state is just going to make lunch. It's going downstairs to do the laundry. It's like that.
See, you and I are like the yin yang, you always emphasize the negative that one is letting go of. And I always emphasize the positive one is moving towards. They're simultaneous. And what you just said reminded me of the deeper part of these traumatized women from Rajneeshpuram, Pune. The human, all levels seek a certain amount of love. The most love we have in our life is we're in our mother's womb. So that's why the birth trauma is the biggest trauma. We all of a sudden don't have all the love. And we have to reconnect with the universe in some way to get enough love. Now, you usually get that juice with your mother first. And then it spreads to the rest of your family and then the rest of your tribe, etc. But it's at a very pre-verbal, deep level, this energy called love. And there's also, because of humanity nature, always fear and rage to protect us. Now, if you've had enough love, then you're open to being nourished everywhere. You love everybody, they love you, you love the bunny rabbits and the trees and whatever. These women who were traumatized, the guys who went after them and their attraction to the guys, you know, there was this basic love that drew them. And on top of it, there's all fear and guilt. You hate yourself because you've done something that you don't think is a good idea, and yet you know there was a part of you that wanted it, but you don't want to admit that to yourself. On the guy's side, you've done it to punish women, because our society brings everybody, I mean, like 99% of us up with not enough love. So everybody hates their mother. All men are angry at women. And this exploitation of these young girls was an expression of the self-hatred and the hatred of women all these guys had. It's not just being a big guy who get notches in his cock. It's because of lack of love of both sides that the violation of what's optimal for the growth of people took place. And the discussion hasn't gotten that deep yet, but I'm going to refer to this video if they're all interested in it.
I remember that story, I think it was Friends of Osho, and I just joined that and I saw your comment on it, and I saw the comment about this girl who was 13 who came over. She wanted the chocolate bar, and to get the chocolate bar she had to lay on her back essentially. And so there was a very perverted thing. But the main point is yes, men may hate women and women may hate men, but the point is, where does the buck stop? Who takes the responsibility for that? Who takes the intent to stop that? That's where we're right back to the very beginning where you're talking about intent.
Yeah, and that's why I brought in both the negative and the positive, the rage circuits and caring, loving circuits. In people who've had enough love as young people, there's an inner balance between the activation of these circuits when you're in a relationship, so that the incest taboo is natural. That people who you love enough, you don't need to have a sexual relationship with. And that extra love inhibits the sexual relationship, which always carries some of the violence.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's, I get that.
I worked in a sex offenders prison for a while, and I got to know some of these guys, and they aren't pervert, mean, psycho, they're really fairly ordinary guys who each got twisted in their own way. But it made me, and I couldn't figure it out this deep until today,
Good.
about how the essential lack of love in our culture is the deepest driver of all sexual perversion.
Okay, so then what I found was that the lack of love, what it is it is a break in the connection between the heart center and the hara, and that's what it does. And when that's restored, then there's that thing where you just love for the sake of loving, and it just happens. You don't even do it; it just happens. And so that energy's there, but it's more of a radiant energy. You have a small radiance from here, and I'm grateful that the Divine Feminine triggered this for me. I'm very grateful. And once she broke this open for me, then everything started movement. It didn't happen right away, but it did initially happen really in a big way right away. But then it took some time to acclimate it. And it's been a year and 3 months. And so, but it's that connection that was broken. It was severed due to anger and hate. And in Pune, I kept away from the women that were closest to Osho then, because I found a lot of them were like my mother and abusive. So I just walked away. And so I kept away. And then I look at how this whole thing unfolded with Osho. And I'm reading these books now. The Buddha in the dentist chair, and I can't remember the sannyasin who was with Osho, and then she wrote a story about it. But I'm getting this insight in here about, yeah. It was both of these books are excellent books for if you want to look for what really transpired. But with my experience there, it was I had a spiritual journey that I ended up just being by myself, and so you know a lot of my story about my Corona days.
This loops back to what triggered this part of the discussion when you said how much better things have gotten for you guys with COVID.
Yeah.
Instead of the little trickle of love that you get from ordinary social interaction, you had to go inside and find, how can I get more love just being me? And that was the impetus to let go of more trauma, to allow the divine female in.
Exactly. Yeah. But the interesting thing is it's like, and you corrected this too, because I just use words that I think people will understand, is you don't really let go of it, you transcend it, but what you do is you walk away from your lines of self-defense. In fact, I realized this, and then I listened to a Leonard Cohen song. he always gets there first. He sits there and he goes, I had to get past my lines of self-defense. And of course it was funny when I heard it. But it was also, he discovered this sitting in Mount Baldy for 7 years. He had to get past his lines of self-defense. And once those lines were dropped, which is the trauma on the vagus nerve, but there's that tightness, that tension. Once that tension's released, then you can be more natural. And really, isn't that the thing that we all know we are? We can be 100% natural in this human body, but there's just lines of defense, self-defense that block that.
There's a huge amount of the trauma therapy in America now that's got to do with the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is it's still too biological. They don't see that the intent to stay protected is what programs the vagus nerve to behave that way. That you have to change the deep knowing, the trauma behind the intent, before it will let go of the vagus nerve.
Well, isn't that the whole reason behind dynamic meditation and your 12 Tibetans? Isn't that the whole thing about it? You're moving your body and you're stretching and you're relaxing, and that alone gives you that relax. It relaxes, physically relaxes the vagus nerve just for a while until you re-identify with the trauma, which you do in just a few moments. But it gives you that break.
It's exactly, there's a simultaneity, it's all happening at the same time. We have different concepts called mind and body as the one who's causing the other, but they're happening simultaneously. So if you're affecting one, you're affecting the other at the same time. And giving it just enough time to say, oh yeah, I don't have to be that anymore. It's so cool.
Yeah.
What I would love you to say something about, Sammy Joe, is almost everybody is stuck by being identified with their victim trauma. Like, I can't tell you, 90% of my patients all present like, I'm broken and you fix me. But they hang on to being a victim. They never get to the point that you're at where you say, I'm this and I've got this body that's got these problems. Now, what can I do about the body? You are more disidentified with your illness than almost anybody I know who has such a chronic, debilitating illness as you've had. So anything you could say about how you were disidentified with the poor me, with the victim, would be of enormous help to so many people.
Well, that's a kind of depressing state to be in, and on top of, what could be, what's already a challenging situation. I don't need to heap more dung on myself, so I just got sick of it, and I just don't do that anymore. And, when we were talking about this a few days ago with Doug, when the adult asthma left him and stuff, he sent me a video from Krishnamurti. And he was talking about, that intent and how do you stop a habit or behavior that isn't any good for you. And he said, you just do it in that moment. And it's not like you have to plan it out or, make a program or, that works for many people. I mean, look at the 12 steps for Alcoholics Anonymous and other addicts. That's kept a lot of people sober for years. But
did you just sort of relax and accept whatever was there rather than trying to fight it or figure it out?
Yeah, because for one thing, I was just so worn out, by the illness and everything itself that maybe, I just got thrashed so bad I didn't have the effort to, hold on to the victimhood or whatever. And, it didn't do me any good, so I just left it.
The other thing is, I'm going to butt in here a little bit because the thing is Samantha understands this. She's not her physical body. She's had 2 NDEs. So she knows she's not the physical body. She's seen it.
I don't know what NDE is.
A near-death experience. Yeah.
Well, I was actually completely dead, kind of like...
Yeah. There's nothing near about it, right?
Yeah, when I was 5, I was dead for 5 minutes and came back. And even as a child, that just gave me like this major drive and incentive that, I knew this is a finite existence and I better wring everything out of it I can, because you never know when it's, the switch is going to go off. But, yeah, I don't know. Most of the people I know that have MS are driven, to try to change things, make things better. I mean, of course, those are the ones that I gravitate towards, trying to improve our own situation. And so we don't spend a lot of time wringing our hands but plenty of them are, they're just wrapped up in the agony of it. And, I don't try to teach them or anything other than by example. And I talk about detachment. I mean, I suppose that can be a psychological issue. They call that detachment can be an issue where or disassociated. But it can also be a positive thing where you're just, like, there's my body, it's a problem. But, I'm not going to beat myself up some more by wringing my hands over it.
Part of the problem you're describing is a semantic problem in that they use the same word detachment for two very different processes. Process one is splitting of the mind into two pieces.
Right.
That's detachment. But witnessing, authentic meditation, is also a different kind of detachment. And I think you're talking more about the latter than the former.
You're right.
Looking at you today, I see such a radiance around you and feel such a warm radiance around me. And I don't know if it never was there before or it was there just to become aware of it. But it's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
No, it's always good to commune with you on these topics, but thank you for the semantic definition. That's right, because it is witnessing and awareness, and it's for me it's not an instant and then it lasts. I do have to remind myself and do the practice and remind myself to breathe and to witness and be aware. But I mean, it's probably like that for any meditator, because the world is always, trying to drag your attention back to it, and you just have to spend time with yourself and try to do that, the witnessing and the breathing and the transcendence, not the detachment, but yes, transcend the situation, because it is what it is. And you're only going to aggravate the situation if you dwell on it too much and don't try to just, move to a saner place and let go of it.
Do either of you have the experience that when you've been involved in something, like either a thought or a conversation or something, you experience yourself as a subject and it as an object. But when it relaxes or gets to a certain depth, all of a sudden you and the thought are one. Like what Krishnamurti means when he says the observer is the observed. And it's like I am you and you are me all of a sudden. It becomes the experience. We're not two anymore. One can't do that, but it happens more